I went no contact. And my mom had me SWATed. Growing up as the youngest child and only son in my family turned me into something I never wanted to be, my psychopathic mother's emotional prisoner. What started as seemingly overprotective mothering when I was small gradually twisted into something so deeply disturbing and inappropriate. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs were always there, but as a child, you don't have the vocabulary or understanding to recognize when your mother's love has crossed the line into something sick and possessive. My mother had what some relatives diplomatically called a queen mother complex, though in reality, it was far more sinister than that simple label suggested. Every event, every holiday, every moment of celebration, no matter whose it was supposed to be, had to revolve entirely around her. Even my own birthdays became her personal stage for attention-seeking, despite her doing absolutely none of the planning, preparation, or work. She demanded to be honored and revered at all times, treating herself like visiting royalty who deserved constant worship and adoration. When she didn't get the level of attention she felt she deserved, the manipulation would begin immediately, subtle at first, then escalating to dramatic emotional outbursts that could last for days or even weeks. The infantilizing behavior started when I was very young and never, ever stopped. In fact, it only grew more intense and inappropriate as I got older. Picture this nightmare scenario. I'm 17 years old, nearly an adult, sitting at our family dinner table, and my mother is actively attempting to spoon-feed me like I'm a helpless toddler. She would coo at me in baby talk, making airplane noises with the spoon, completely oblivious to, or more likely deliberately ignoring, how humiliating this was for a teenage boy. When I refused and tried to feed myself like a normal human being, she'd launch into elaborate theatrical displays of hurt and betrayal, tears streaming down her face as she claimed I wasn't being supportive of her emotional needs. The gaslighting that followed was relentless and sophisticated. She'd twist reality until I questioned my own memory and perception, making me wonder if maybe I really was being unreasonable for wanting to eat independently at 17 years old. But the behavior that truly made my skin crawl and filled me with a deep, nauseating dread began when she turned 45. She started openly discussing her desperate desire for extensive plastic surgery, a complete facelift, breast implants, maybe a tummy tuck, all designed to make her look 20 years younger and more attractive. The truly disturbing part wasn't just her vanity, but the way she would have these conversations. She'd position herself strategically so I could hear every word, then spend long minutes describing exactly how she wanted to transform her body, all while giving me pointed, meaningful looks that made my stomach turn. Her eyes would lock onto mine during these monologues, and there was something predatory and inappropriate in her gaze that I couldn't quite name but instinctively recoiled from. When my father, understandably disturbed by both the expense and the underlying psychology, refused to pay for these unnecessary procedures, she'd explode into screaming, rage-filled arguments that could be heard throughout the house. She'd call him unsupportive, selfish, and cruel, accusing him of wanting her to look old and ugly, before retreating into her bedroom for weeks of playing the victim, emerging only to deliver silent treatments and passive-aggressive comments designed to punish him for his refusal to fund her transformation. The final straw came during a church service when I was 22. She accompanied me to receive communion, then attempted to feed me the holy bread herself, instructing me to chew slowly, as if I were a toddler. The congregation watched in stunned silence as I walked out, my face burning with humiliation and rage. That day, I made the decision that would change everything. I was moving out. I found a small room at a friend's parents' house for $200 a month. As I packed my belongings, my mother alternated between desperate pleas and emotional breakdowns. "I'm your son, not your husband," I told her during one particularly intense confrontation. "I'm sick of the way you act around me. I have my own life to live." She ran away sobbing and we didn't speak for months. Through my cousin, I learned she was telling everyone I'd come running back any day. When I didn't, something inside her snapped completely. The psychological warfare escalated at family gatherings. She'd follow me around like a lost puppy, loudly discussing intimate details about my childhood to anyone who'd listen. At my uncle's birthday party, she cornered my aunt and began graphic descriptions of how I used to breastfeed, lamenting that she couldn't still make me do that. My aunt's face twisted with disgust. She'd finally witnessed the disturbing behavior I'd been describing for years. When I refused to play along with her games, she'd grab my arm and try to physically drag me outside for a talk, like I was still a small child. The last time she attempted this, she dug her fingernails into my shoulders so hard I had to swat her away. That's when she switched tactics entirely, moving to pure emotional manipulation. The breaking point came at that same family party. After being ignored and dismissed all evening, she suddenly stood up and declared herself the matriarch, demanding I come to her immediately. "I don't live with you anymore," I reminded her calmly, "and I'm not a child." For the first time ever, other family members backed me up. She screeched at all of us before storming out, then spent the rest of the night calling me repeatedly, leaving increasingly unhinged voicemails. That's when I made the decision to leave not just her house, but the entire city. I had been dating a wonderful girl for several months, and she'd expressed interest in meeting my family. Despite my warnings about my mother's behavior, she thought I was exaggerating, until they actually met. My mother was passive-aggressive from the moment they were introduced, referring to my girlfriend as someone who was taking her baby away. The most chilling moment came when my mother was cutting a cake she'd baked, giving my girlfriend an eerie, predatory stare while gripping a large kitchen knife. My girlfriend couldn't handle the psychological pressure and ended our relationship soon after, admitting she never wanted someone like my mother as a potential mother-in-law. I couldn't blame her. When I announced I was moving over 1,000 miles away, my mother went absolutely ballistic. She tried to physically latch onto me, screaming that she wouldn't allow it. I threw her off and told her she didn't have the power to stop me. I'd been saving money for years and I bought a truck and camper trailer, spending the next 2 years living out of that camper while working simple jobs in Northern California. For those 2 blissful years, I maintained no contact with any family members. Eventually, I met someone new, the woman I'm still with today. Neither of us is particularly interested in marriage or children, which suits us perfectly. In 2016, I finally broke my no-contact rule with my parents, but I laid down strict ground rules. They would treat me with adult respect, they wouldn't pester my girlfriend, and they wouldn't speak to me like a child or bring up anything from my childhood. When we visited for Thanksgiving, my mother couldn't follow a single one of these rules. "I'm done," I told her. "Don't bother calling me until you realize I'm a grown man." She tried to physically block the door and started quoting Bible verses about respecting parents. "You don't respect me," I replied, "so I won't respect you." In December, she began a campaign of phone calls, emails, and texts, begging me to come for Christmas, but specifically requesting I not bring my girlfriend. When I said if she wasn't welcome, neither was I. My mother called me unreasonable and referred to my girlfriend as an interloper to our special bond, insisting that no woman should come between a mother and her son. When I refused to comply with her demands, she escalated to threats of self-harm. "You can do what you like with your own body," I told her, "but I won't be coming to Christmas. I'll be spending it with my girlfriend's family instead." She said I'd regret that decision and slammed the phone down in rage. 2 days before Christmas, my world exploded. Police kicked down the door of the small house my girlfriend and I were renting, convinced we were running a drug laboratory. We were detained and interrogated while officers turned our yard into chaos, bringing all our furniture and personal belongings outside to be inspected in rows. They went through everything with drug-sniffing dogs, finding nothing more than aspirin and my depression medication. The disappointment on their faces was obvious. They'd been hoping for a big bust. The terrifying truth emerged during the investigation. My psychopathic mother had called in the false report, providing details so accurate she had to have been stalking us. She told them I was using my camper as a front to sell drugs, probably inspired by too many episodes of Breaking Bad. When police found nothing in the house, vehicles, or camper, they were forced to put everything back and release us. We were furious and traumatized, but I could only file a complaint. The damage to our rental house left our landlord angry and us responsible for repairs. But karma was swift and merciless. My mother was arrested during her own Christmas Day party, in front of most of our family. The investigation revealed the full extent of her stalking. She'd taken a flight to my state, spent days following us around, taking photographs of me, my girlfriend, and our home. Most disturbingly, she'd used the spare key we kept hidden in a fake rock to break into our house, photographing everything she could find, right down to the underwear in my dresser. Police discovered she'd documented where I worked and tracked the times my girlfriend and I were usually home. We still don't know what her ultimate goal was, but it clearly involved more than just scaring us with a police raid. While I pressed charges for stalking and attempted framing, I didn't want to spend any more time in court near her than absolutely necessary. What happened next came partly from my own experience and partly from my father's first-hand account. My dad had no idea what my mother was planning. She told him she was taking a small vacation for her mental health, without revealing her destination. He would have warned me if he'd known what she intended. After secretly following us for days with her smartphone, she returned home looking smugly victorious. My father described the expression as someone who thought they'd won some grand game. She seemed unusually happy and giddy, right up until police arrived to arrest her on Christmas Day. Dad said she was sobbing and claiming innocence as they carted her away. The evidence was overwhelming. All the photos were on her phone, and the false police report was traced directly back to her number. When confronted with proof, she broke down completely, crying and begging for mercy. No one bailed her out. She had to use her own money to secure release, spending considerable time locked up before finally paying her way out. She didn't try to flee. In fact, she firmly believed herself justified and thought she could convince a judge she was right. When her lawyer advised pleading guilty, she fired him and decided to represent herself. This decision proved catastrophic. The court date arrived faster than expected, and my girlfriend and I had to fly back to testify against my mother. I stayed only as long as legally required, booking the first flight home afterward. Throughout the proceedings, my mother stared at me constantly. Sometimes with that creepy, pleading expression I knew so well, other times with pure rage. When she took the stand, she gave a lengthy speech about why she believed her actions were justified. I needed to be taught a lesson, for refusing to come home and for putting some woman before her. She insisted she should have been the only woman I'd ever need. Even while delivering this disturbing monologue, she kept trying to stare at me until the judge repeatedly ordered her to stop. I left before the sentencing, unable to stomach any more of her psychological games. The judge stated he believed my mother was mentally unwell, which triggered another explosion. She screamed that she was completely sane, which only made her appear more unstable. She claimed to be just a mother looking out for her son, doing what was necessary to teach me a lesson. That's when my father spoke up from the gallery. If she was really looking out for him, she wouldn't have tried to make her own son into her second husband or frame him for crimes he didn't commit. This sent my mother into such a rage that court guards had to physically separate them. The judge, originally planning leniency, decided she needed real consequences and sentenced her to 2 years in prison. Her reaction was pure toddler tantrum, pounding her fists and crying like a baby. She had to be carried out of the courtroom because she refused to cooperate, going completely limp in protest. My father described the next 2 years without her as absolute bliss. He made up his mind to divorce her the moment she was released, literally serving papers on the day she came home before leaving that house for good. He moved into his Airstream trailer, parking it at a friend's property while fighting her in divorce court. During her incarceration, I reconnected with extended family members who admitted they'd known for years how disturbing her behavior toward me had been. They apologized for not intervening, especially my father, who cried during a phone call while giving me a heartfelt apology. The divorce proceedings revealed even more shocking truths about my mother. My father won decisively, and she got to keep the house mainly because he no longer wanted any part of it. The court ruled he owed no alimony since they were both retired, so he chose to move to my state, living happily in his Airstream trailer along the west coast. He spends his evenings sipping tea and watching the waves, telling me he's never been happier. My mother didn't handle the divorce well, trying to draw out proceedings until several family members came forward with witness statements. My sisters testified about what she was really like, and some relatives even provided recordings of her most disturbing comments. The final blow came when multiple men came forward with proof that she'd been cheating on my father throughout their marriage. The judge refused to let her drag out the divorce any longer, and even her lawyer advised her to accept the terms if she wanted to keep her pension intact. When everything was finalized, my mother was left alone in the old family home with virtually no one wanting anything to do with her. She's reached out to me several times since then, but I've made my position crystal clear. This is the result of her own actions, and now she has to live with the consequences. She tried claiming she was getting therapy, but I told her she should have done that decades ago. I don't care anymore, I said. You can't undo what you've already done. She cried and hung up the phone. I haven't spoken to her since, and I never will again. Today, I live peacefully with my girlfriend, my father visits regularly in his Airstream, and I've built strong relationships with family members who finally understand the truth about what I endured. My mother sits alone in that house, a prisoner of her own making, while I've found the freedom and peace I never thought possible. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to completely cut out the poison, even when that poison shares your DNA. I learned that some people are so fundamentally broken that no amount of love, patience, or second chances will ever fix them. My mother made her choices and I made mine. The difference is I can sleep peacefully at night knowing I chose sanity over family obligation, and my own well-being over someone else's mental illness. The little boy who was once trapped in her web of manipulation and control is gone forever. In his place stands a man who refuses to be anyone's emotional hostage ever again.